Afternoon, everyone. This is the September 19th, 2025 meeting of the Land Development Team Oversight Subcommittee. And may I get a roll call, please? Here.
Councilmember Santamaria.
Here.
Councilmember Mike Jordan. Not here.
All right, and he may be joining us a little bit later. All right. Are there any announcements?
Thank you, Chair. I did just want to announce some new staff promotions.
Great, thank you. Looking forward to the changes coming to Public Works Department coming up, and a new department out of that. All right. We did have the draft minutes. Being that you weren't here for those, I believe you can vote on them. You're allowed to vote on them if you're comfortable with doing that. If not, we can table it to the end till Mike Jordan gets here. So, members, then. Okay, we'll come back to that later when Member Jordan is here. And on to item C, public comment. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak to general public comment for items not on today's agenda but under the purview of the LDT? I assume, Mr. Sweeney, you want to speak to the items today? All right. So we'll close general public comment and now turn it over to Ms. DeBusk for the agenda items, starting with the Novak report.
Thank you, Chair Friedman. And I did just want to start with a little bit of background because it's been a while since we met, and we also have a new member, so just a little refresher for everyone. The Land Development Team is the staff that review and manage all aspects of the land development process, so any project that needs a planning application, a building permit, public works permit, it's all reviewed by this one team. The Land Development Team is now comprised of 6 departments. We have Community Development, Public Works, Water Resources, Fire, Parks and Rec, and Sustainability and Resilience. The purpose of the LDT Oversight Committee is to advise the Land Development Team and oversee implementation of process improvements. The Land Development Team Oversight Committee was established to implement the recommendations of the Novak report. And so essentially that involves reviewing and providing input on LDT procedural changes, to review and provide input on potential amendments to the municipal code, board and commission guidelines, as well as city charter, and to provide other input to the LDT management. So as I mentioned, the Novak report was the impetus for the LDTO, and that report was prepared in 2020, and it resulted in 31 recommendations for improvements to the land development team process. Those recommendations fall into the 6 basic categories shown on this screen. And here's an excerpt from the table that we have internally that documents those 31 recommendations as well as all of the sub-recommendations within there. And it also includes the status of each item and notes on implementation. So with that, we'll move on to some updates from the Community Development Department. And we'll start with the Building and Safety Division, and for that, I will turn it over to Raven Rutledge, the Business Analyst in Building and Safety.
Good afternoon. So first up is our building permit dashboard. So this launched in June 17, 2025. It was actually discovered by our IT analyst, Nicole Foman. She oversees our Arcella permitting process, and she learned this from the city of San Diego. Actually uses this technology. It's called Power BI. So we did base it off of their city's website. So what it does is it provides an interactive platform that provides a comprehensive overview of the building and safety permit and inspections data. So this lives on our building and safety website. You don't need an account to access it. You just go to our website, put in building permit dashboard. So yeah, so you go to the website and this can be accessed without needing an account. And so it's great because it does provide real-time data. It's constantly refreshing itself. It is connected directly into Acela, which is our permitting dashboard. So you'll see here there's multiple tabs of overall, residential, commercial, yearly breakdown, and review timeline charts. So what we're able to do is take in data from our permitting website and see, how many applications we are receiving, how many we're issuing. We can even break that down into seeing the average business days to issue from application to issuance. And this does go to implementing the Novak report recommendation number 12. Additionally, the technology, what we're able to do is do a review timeline chart. So this one we're really excited about, and what it can do is any building permit that we have in our system, any person in the public or staff can put it into the search on the left-hand side. There's a record ID area, put that in. And what it will show you is the timeline of a project from the moment it's applied for and accepted into our system to the date that it's issued. And what it will do is provide a breakdown of the timeline between the amount of time it was in the city's hands versus the applicant's hands. So as you can imagine, we've all, heard the statements of a project can take over a year to be issued. And what we don't know from that statement is what that actually means. Now we can see that. And before, when we would go to staff and say, hey, can you give us that breakdown? It took a lot of time to be able to pull that information. Now we can pull that within seconds, and we can learn from that experience. For example, this one is the police department, and it took 125 days of city time versus 316 applicant days. So when you add those two together, the statement is it took over a year to get that permit. Yes, that's true, but now we can see where that was in between that time frame. And there is a link on this slide to be able to access that. Next up is our on-demand heat pump water heater. So first, just an explanation of what an on-demand permit is. So what that means is a person of the public can go onto Acela Citizens Access, which is our permitting processor for the public, and they would go to the building and safety portion to create an application, and they're able to find a list of different instant permits, which we call on-demand permits. So what that means is they'll access that application, they'll answer a series of questions, and answer like some I understand statements. Then they'll go to a fee page, pay their fees, and that's it. It gets, at the end of that, it says, you have a permit, it emails them their permit record, and from there, they can go on and do the work associated with that permit and call them for an inspection. Why that's great is some of those kind of permits that we can take away from our staff having to process those so they can go and work on other items. So Sustainability and Resilience Department reached out to us and said, they came into some money to be able to offer a free permit for people to update their existing water heaters to a heat pump water heater process. So we launched that in January of this year, and we've been able to allow people to apply for these free permits. So when they go in, they answer those same questions, but they don't actually get a fee. So it just emails the permit, and they go on. They reach out to Sustainability and Resilience to continue the rebate process, and that can be seen on their SB Clean Energy page. And that goes into implementing the Novak report recommendation number 16. And here you'll see this is the growing list of on-demand permits that we do have. When I started back in 2020, shortly after that, we started with the like-for-like re-roof, and from there, we've been able to grow to multiple different types of on-demand permits that we offer, and we are continuing to grow this. So I'm working with Public Works to institute a sewer lateral replacement on-demand permit, and we're also working with Sustainability and Resilience again to do an on-demand permit for heat pump water heater with HVAC systems. So earlier last year, the director had asked myself to look into the ability to increase plan viewing stations operations, because for our plan viewing stations, they are done in our lobby, and when we went digital, we were able to do this instead of the paper plans, which was before COVID. We turned it into scanning those plans, and people would view them on the computers that are in the lobby. Now, The downside of that is there's only so much space in the lobby to set up some technology like that. So you can only had, at the time from this picture, you'll see the main table in the middle there. That's where those 2 stations were at. So, we were trying to figure out how do we get more people interviewing plans. That's an essential part to be able to start a project. From working with the city attorneys, we learned that we cannot make this process digital. People cannot view them from their own home. That's due to copyright laws, and also that it is actually required that the plan viewing is done within 630 Garden. So with that in mind, we had to think, okay, how do we use our existing space to increase our viewing stations? So in the back right-hand corner in the photo, there's 2 additional stations that we were able to implement working with IT, and that was able to increase our lobby appointments from 6 to a total of 12. Now, our appointments are available Tuesday through Thursday, and your question could be, why not Mondays? And the reason for that is that's the time for our records and archive staff to be able to process our paper plans to turn them into digital. That process is being sent outside to a company that will then scan those, send them back to us, so we do need time to be able to process those. And our record and archive staff is really good at being able to, when people make an appointment, it does make it required that they're 2 weeks out. And the reason being is because the majority of our plans are still in paper format. So we have to digitize those. So when someone makes that appointment, we don't know if it's going to need to be sent out to be digitized. But what the records and archives is able to do is they'll see that appointment, see, okay, the plans are already digitized, and they'll call the person requesting the appointment and offer them an appointment that is sooner. And we can offer more now that we have 6 additional appointments for a total of 12 per day. And this goes to implementing the Novak report recommendation number 30. And with that, I will turn it over to our Chief Building Official, Tina Dye, to discuss the triennial code update.
Good afternoon, Chair Friedman and committee members. This is just a little preview of the 2025 construction code adoption that you'll be seeing very soon. So a little bit of background, starting at the international level. The International Code Council creates model codes, and then from those codes, California amends, makes necessary amendments to protect California. And at a local level, we can also make amendments to the state after the state makes amendments. So the process we're going through right now is looking at what changes are within this code cycle and seeing if we need to make any, comparing those to our locally adopted ordinance, and then seeing if we need to amend anything from there. So the timeline for the code adoption is ordinance committee on October 21st, and then 2 city council meetings, one for introduction on November 18th, and hopefully adoption on December 2nd. And then the new codes become effective January 2nd, 2026, 30 days after adoption. Be happy to answer any questions, but this is just a little preview of what we're working on. This is one of the bigger lifts of building department and administration, so I might not be explaining it well enough to give you the gravity of what the workload is for this, but just wanted to let you know it's coming your way, and if you have any comments or questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Okay. Since we're having different presentations and different aspects, they might be fresh in your mind, so as we go through, we'll just ask questions at each section. So any questions on triennial codes or on the LDT, Novak, and other things? All right, not seeing any questions right now, but we can always catch you later when we're on the back side of the presentation.
Okay, so now for the departmental efforts. So first up is our extended counter hours. So to give a little background, when COVID occurred, we had to make the switch from in-office operations to fully shut down and remote. And staff did a great job of being able to become a digitized operation. But what that meant is we went from being an operation that had interaction with the public during very set hours to accept plans and for permitting process and public works as well as planning, to having an online system that is available 24/7, 7 days a week. And so what that means is our counter staff are having to be able to manage that workload that now, before that interaction was at the counter, now it's coming in digitally. And so when someone comes into our counters and has a check-in status, maybe a permit, a quick permit, or any of those conversations, it's not actually moving any of that work that's coming through, and that, like I said, the 24/7, 7 days a week. So with that in mind, the decision was made to have our counters be open 8:30 to 12, Monday through Thursday, to allow our counter staff to be able to process those interactions and the permits and applications that were coming in digitally. So at the time, the city administrator earlier last year, fall of last year, had reached out and asked, how we can extend our counter hours to allow for the public to have further access to us outside of just the 8:30 to 12. And so through that, looking into what the talking to staff and what we were able to manage, the determination was that on Wednesdays, we are open till 5. So now our schedule is Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, 8:30 to 12, and Wednesdays, 8:30 to 5. We do, even before this happened, we were keeping track of our counter operations of our sign-in sheets. And so what we're seeing consistently is generally Monday mornings are our busiest times for foot traffic, generally about 8 customers per hour. Wednesdays do see the highest average walk-ins, and that's due to it having the most hours for operations. But when you put it down into a per hour, it's actually seeing the lowest average visitors per hour. We see a drop off around 3 o'clock. So we continue to manage to see how we can be available for the public, but at the same time, having our counter staff have enough time to handle the operations that are coming through our digital system. So this was a really small change that was, I think, very helpful. So this is auto emails to applicants confirming review. This is both on our building permits as well as in the planning process. So this minor change, what it did is anytime a project goes into review, an auto email goes out letting that applicant know that it is now in review. And so this is just a great way to be able to give the public confirmation that their project has started in the review process, and to be able to get an update and know that they'll be getting responses shortly after. And that goes into implementing the Novak report recommendation number 12. So our digital plan review DigiPlan. The last time we met, this hadn't been launched yet, but now since then, September 9th, 2024, it had launched, and it has now been a year. Having been a person that was overseeing the implementation of this, I will say I'm very proud of staff and also the public being able to take on a new electronic plan review software. I think it's been a big beneficial, because what we learned from, again, what we lost with COVID is with paper plans, we were able to do what's called red lines of, drawing on the plans and saying exactly what needed to be corrected. And we lost that ability when we moved over to the PDF plan submission. And with the correction letters that we were producing, we had to be really specific about, where that correction is on the page. So at times it could feel like, where's Waldo? We're all talking about the same thing. So now with our DigiPlan, we're able to bring back the red lines, and staff are able to point exactly to where this correction is needed. And when the public is responding, staff are able to quickly be able to identify where that correction response is going to. So it speeds up the time on both sides. And we've also heard from customers that they're happy to be able to have those comments back on the plans. And with the company that we purchased that from, TruePoint, they are ever evolving this technology. And we already had a demo with them, seeing how they're going to bring in AI into this kind of technology. So we're excited to see it continue to grow and improve, not just for staff, but also the public. And with that, we had to redo our apply for permit handouts, because they were on a previous program. And so the planning analyst, Brenda Belts, did a great job of creating a comprehensive user guide. And she didn't just do it on our new permitting software, she did it on the entire permitting process. So this guide is a one-stop shop for how to even create an account to be able to start the process, to checking your status and paying your fees. And this lives on our community development apply for permit page. So All of the tabs that you see to the right, those are short guides that are of the major user guide that anyone, both staff and the public, can benefit from. The pre-approved ADU program. So this came from a requirement of the state that required local jurisdictions to create a program that allowed for designers to submit ADU plans for pre-approval. So we launched in July of last year, accepting submissions from designers. In the first phase, it started with going through the planning process of the design review boards. They could pick which review boards they wanted to go in front of to get approval for their plans. A back and forth, little changes that were recommended. They went through that process, and once they got their approval from those boards, they would then go over to building and safety, where we did a full structural, energy, mechanical, electrical, plumbing review of the plans. So that means the whole structure is been approved. So that all wrapped up around earlier this year, and in May of 2025, we were able to post plans on our website with phase 2. So now we currently have 10 designs available for selection that anyone from the public can go. If they go to the website, what they'll see is the different photos that and designs for those ADUs. They'll get information on the sizes and what's the room availability, and then also we'll have the contact information of those designers. So phase 3 would be an owner would go to the page, pick a design, and contact that designer to be able to purchase it. We were not involved with the price setting of those. That's on the designer to have that discussion. And then once they pick their design, then they would submit back for a permit with us. And the great thing about this process is because the structure has already been reviewed, we don't have to re-review it. So that means what we're doing on the permitting side is doing a site plan review. So that means, connection into the ground, the property line distances, and due to that, we were able to reduce the permitting fees on these by 25% because it is less of a review, and also it's an expedited review timeline of 10 business days. So as of right now, we haven't had anyone purchase and submit a plan to come for permitting. So we do look forward to seeing that happen and seeing what the phase 3 looks like. And that goes to implementing Novak Report Recommendation number 25. And last up, our stakeholder collaboration. This is something we're really proud of, is being able to connect with the stakeholders locally to understand where we can improve and also understand where we're doing things well. For example, a meeting with the Downtown Santa Barbara Business Improvement Association actually led to our building permit dashboard. So in those conversations, we discussed improvements that were happening, and then the question was, how do you have data to back up that the improvements you're making are actually helping to improve your processes? And so in that conversation, we're trying to figure out how to pull that data from Acela, and that's where our IT analysts came in with the Power BI dashboard technology. So it goes to show it's really important for us to have these meetings with them, and we will continue to have them to learn how we can improve, not just for them, but also for our staff. And with that, I will pass it over to the interim director for the planning division.
We'll do
updates.
questions on the departmental efforts.
Okay.
Any questions from my colleagues? Member Jordan?
So the part where we've picked out one milestone to talk to right back to clients, to participants. Are there other milestones that we also do that, have an automatic notification? And then are there automatic notifications to staff when an applicant does something in the system?
So Commissioner Jordan, yes, we do have automatic emails that are going out throughout the life of that permitting process. So for example, when a permit application is accepted, an auto response goes out. When you're uploading documents, just so you know that we received it, you receive an email with that as well. So when there's corrections, so every step of the way we have those emails that are going out to the applicant.
Was this one just one that was languishing behind? Or you're saying that it implements number 12? Are there more to do to make us more automatically responsive rather than somebody doesn't know what's happening and has to ask us?
Yeah, so essentially it was building out more further. I think it's as we realize it's continually can be improved upon, so that's one of the ways we learn that we can improve.
Okay, and then they don't let me in a cella for a good reason, right? But, so I constantly hear that people contact us. I'm assuming some of the time it's in a cella, some of the time it's outside the cella, and then wait for weeks and weeks and weeks and don't get a response for whatever reason. So are we doing that also internally, where we don't have to rely on one particular person to look back and see that there's a response and there's work to do, or we're actually internally poking people to say somebody has returned some information or somebody has taken a step and they're waiting on us to do the work? Are we doing that internally just like we would be externally with an applicant?
Yes, so our counter staffs are very good at being able to track the information that's coming in because we have multiple ways people to contact our counter staff. So we have the phone, email, we also have virtual appointments. So it is a shared email where they're all able to see.
Okay.
And so they are, rotating staff members so we can make sure that we're answering in a reasonable time.
Okay, thanks.
Welcome.
Any questions? If you, I guess, pull up slide 23, just the pre-approved ADUs, just to understand this. So now we have 10 pre-approved design guidelines, or pre-approved products, so that the person could come in and use any of those 10, and they'd have to coordinate it again with the proprietor of those. But we haven't had any come in, and the slide says that it's been available since May. How are we publicizing that we have this?
Chair Friedman, so we put out a bulletin and to the public and as well as an LDT news and brief about these. So that's how we put out the information. We're just, we're waiting to see if anyone wants to move forward with them.
I'd recommend maybe reaching out to our local media to do a story about it, because a lot of time it's a homeowner that wants to do this, but they wouldn't necessarily be looking at the city websites. It might be somebody who has never had to get a permit or very minimal permit with the city. So if we were to reach out and do a featured story on this and why we did it and the process and how it's available, just a way to kind of generate some publicity about it. I think it's very innovative, and ADUs are part of our housing strategy, especially for keeping families here. So the more we can get the word out that the process is less cumbersome in terms of time and cost now, and that is something I think our local media would help us in terms of getting the information out to the public. So just that recommendation. And then I think that is all I have for right now.
Another comment on that?
All right, Member Jordan.
Yeah, so just a comment, it took that long for my phone to pull up that website. And so I guess I would echo ADUs are happening all the time, it seems to me. And so it's been 5 months or whatever, and nobody's approached us. So that's telling me two things that I maybe know. One, that none of the designs work with the people who are looking at them. And so if that's true, then how do we remedy that? Just a rhetorical question. It's great that we have 10, but if they're never used, we don't really have 10. And then why either don't we buy the design rights and then on a global basis and then hand them out or sell them buy one design, sell it over and over and over, so eventually we're making money in our purchase too, but what stops us from doing that? Or why would I be negotiating with, it's 3 different firms here? 3 different firms on these 10 designs, and them kind of looking at me and going, well, I think he can pay this much, but this guy can only pay this much. And soon you have people coming up with anecdotal stories about sewer lateral replacements on the same street where, one's $5,000 and one's $10,000, and we actually did a program to remedy that. So those are more comments than questions. I guess it's just worrying that nobody's jumping all over these as a fast track, and are we doing something to figure out a reason why, while we don't, ADUs are still going along pretty much full steam in my neighborhood, so. Yep.
All right, thank you. Go on to the planning division now.
I will be giving the Planning Division update today. And as you probably know, implementing the housing element is the major focus for the Planning Division right now, beyond the day-to-day processing of all the private applications that come in. And with regard to process improvements and Novak report efforts, we did complete the Objective Design and Development Standards in March 2025, and that implements Novak recommendation number 21. It also implements recommendation number 13 because as part of those amendments, while we were doing zoning ordinance amendments, we eliminated some of the mandatory pre-applications, and so that simplifies that review process for applicants for those project types. Some other efforts related to process improvements include updating our 30-day planning review letter template. That was done both to simplify for staff as well as for the public. We got some good feedback working with a subcommittee of the AIA in terms of things that they would like to see in the letter, things that would be easier for them to respond to, and so the letter has been updated to reflect those discussions. And then also we established on-call contracts with several environmental consultants, and that will facilitate review, environmental review of projects that are determined to need some outside assistance. So we're hoping that that will be a time saver. And here's a list of projects that we are currently working on. I do want to highlight the single-family streamlining project, which implements multiple Novak report recommendations, number 13, 15, 23, 24, and 26. The City Council did receive an update and preview of this recently, and the next step is to take it to Planning Commission. It has definitely taken more time than we initially anticipated, but it's because the scope has grown. So it started as just single-family design board streamlining improvements, and as we were working on that, we realized that that really goes hand in hand with updating the ordinance itself to simplify single-family residential development standards, and so there are a lot of related ordinance amendments that are going with that. And then in terms of some upcoming items that we have, we want to tackle our ADU ordinance. This is also a housing element program. The hope is that we can simplify, streamline, and facilitate these ADUs. State law keeps changing, and so that makes it difficult for people to understand our ordinance because portions become out of date as state law changes, and so the more we can just reference state law, the better our ordinance will be moving forward. Also looking forward to working on some multi-unit housing program updates. And then finally, a fee study, which we hope will kick off later this year, so that we can analyze all of our LDT fees and ensure that we are adequately covering the costs of providing services. And now we will do an update from the Creeks Division, and I will turn it over to Aaron Markey, the Creeks Division
Hold on
Manager.
one
Oh, sorry.
second. Just want to do any questions on this. I think it's just easier as you go through, so any questions on this aspect of it? All right. I did have a question on the ADU, or two questions, one on the ADU ordinance and one on the fee study. On the ADU ordinance, how are the new templates going? Are they going to be referenced in the ordinance itself, or is that separate?
Chair Friedman, do you mean the new pre-approved
Yeah.
ADU designs? I don't anticipate that those will be referenced in the ordinance itself, but it does provide a good opportunity for us to let the public know that they exist.
Okay. And then on the fee study on LDT, make sure we're covering services. So how are we looking at the cost of services, but are we, the council had approved probably about 2 years ago. They looked at the benefits to the general public versus individuals and community goods. So are we taking that into consideration too, that there would be some fees, even if they're related to home building and other things that might be more of a community benefit? So are we taking all that into consideration, not just this is what it costs and the 100% cost is on the project applicant, but we might be something that we feel is a community good, so the city might work to provide some of the funding for that.
Yes, so Chair Friedman, that will not be taken into account with the fee study because we do want to understand what it costs to provide that service. But that is something that council will consider when it's time to set the fees in terms of, is there anything where we want to reduce the fee? For example, appeals. Council has year after year approved a lower fee for appeals because we don't want to discourage them, from any neighbor being able to file them. So if you were to add up the amount of staff time involved in an appeal, it would probably be cost prohibitive for many people. So that's one of them. Another item where we do that is with historic structures. Those fees and time related to processing historic structures are reduced from the actual cost. So those will definitely be things that can be talked about once we have the study in terms of looking at priorities.
Okay, so this is just for the study to get the data, and then we're going to have the policy discussions based on the study.
Correct.
Okay, I was ahead of myself. Thanks for the clarification. All right, Ms. Markey.
All right. Good afternoon, committee members. I'm Erin Markey, the Creeks Division Manager, here to talk to you about some updates as far as our involvement in the LDT review team, starting with our stormwater management program. So just a little background, the city is required to implement this under the Clean Water Act in compliance with our MS4 permit from the Water Board, and Creeks has been coordinating that for the city since 2006. It includes things that are done by city staff all across the city, so enforcement and oversight of construction BMPs, those temporary kind of stormwater control measures, our illicit discharge program, so enforcement and elimination of illegal discharges to our storm drain system, water quality monitoring, trash capture, so extensive cleanup efforts that our department leads, as well as other in stormwater system, CDS units, and storm drain screens that we manage. And then extensive outreach and education is also a requirement of our permit. What I'm here to talk about today is our post-construction requirements. So our Creek staff that are involved in the LTT review are reviewing development proposals for compliance with those post-construction requirements. And those were last updated in December of 2020, and that was to really try to increase clarity and kind of consistency of the stormwater tiers. The tiers are the different thresholds for when those requirements are triggered across the city. And since that time, we've drastically reduced the number of Tier 3 projects that we review. So some updates of resources that we're trying to provide to both applicants, the development community, just the general public. We've updated our website extensively to kind of better explain the why stormwater management matters, but also why these requirements exist. Essentially, highlighting the impacts of increased urban runoff on pollution to our creeks and ocean, but also flooding and degradation of creek habitat. And, the primary goal of our stormwater management program is really to decrease urban runoff and improve water quality. So we've also created some guidance documents as well as updating our website, and I've brought examples if you guys are curious. But what we're calling our Stormwater Solution Guide is really just a pretty lookbook of what do these stormwater BMPs, as we call them, look like. So it's really simple text, really nice images of what these things can look like, while highlighting the kind of low impact development green infrastructure projects that we'd really like to encourage, that have, other community benefits such as urban greening, but also lesser cost of maintenance over time. And then we have our quick reference guides for each of the stormwater tiers. So I don't know if anyone's ever pulled up our stormwater guidance manual. Our technical guidance manual is over 400 pages. It's kind of overwhelming for applicants to digest. So we've created these seriously 6-page simple guides. The first 2 pages is really, again, the why these regulations exist, how you can comply, some examples of measures you could install to comply, and then like a very simple site plan with our general comments, like our standard comments of different information that's required to be on the plans to comply. Our goal with this is really to upfront have applicants be able to be like, okay, this is what I need to submit to comply, as well as just making it clear how available we are to help and answer questions. And then, yeah, the last thing I have, since I'm here, I wanted to just give a brief update on the creek buffer ordinance, which a draft was released in January. So our department has kind of been leading this effort. And we are, we released the draft. We had an extensive public comment period. We received a lot of community input on that. We've reviewed and summarized those comments. We went back to the Sustainability Council Committee a month or 2 ago and our Creeks Advisory Committee, kind of looking for input on what to target with a future RFP for some consultant services to help us do some initial analysis and look at what buffer distances should be, what creeks should be impacted, kind of all the different parts of this ordinance, and help us draft an updated draft. So we hope that that RFP will be going out in the next week or 2, and that we'll be able to take that contract with a full status update on the ordinance to council in November. And that's it.
Any questions for creeks? Don't have any, but this is coming up as Creek Week, so just wanted to mention that while we're here. A lot of great activities are planned for Creek Week. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, and to close out, we're going to talk about some key items we're working on for future implementation. This, again, is that list of the 31 Novak report recommendations. Most have been completed. I've highlighted the ones that have not been. We did start with what I would call the low-hanging fruit, the things that were easy to implement. Some of these required zoning ordinance amendments. Those are a little tougher, took more time. Of these highlighted items, most of them have been started. Many are almost complete. Or are, 80% implemented, but there's one more thing that we want to do to wrap it up. And so related to those remaining items, there are a few that we want to focus on. And in that regard, as you may know, there's been a lot of flux with the LDT in terms of having a lot of staff in acting roles, which has kind of the carryover effect of then the people filling those roles are not filling their roles and people are stepping up to fill their roles. So there's been a lot of that recently, in addition to the normal staff turnover. But as I mentioned at the beginning, with some new appointments, we recently gained some stability in that regard. And so with that, there's a renewed commitment to the LDT and the LDT goals. And so for items 29 and 31, that's what we want to focus on. We want to bring back our quarterly LDT internal meetings. That's something that it was actually something that we had crossed off the list because it had been implemented. And then with COVID, those meetings were put on hold, but we want to bring them back. Also develop an LDT onboarding process so that new staff understand why the LDT is here, what their role is. There's been, as I said, lots of history to the LDT and why it became what it is in terms of this collaborative review process. And so we want to highlight that and let staff understand what it's all about. And then finally, number 12, ACELA process reporting is one that we want to focus on for the planning division. And it would be very similar to what has already been implemented for building and safety. We want to have those same types of reporting tools for the planning division. So that work effort is underway, and I hope that we'll be able to provide an update to you at the next LDTO meeting. And with that,
Before we go to public comment, any questions on this section? Right, not seeing any public comment.
We do
Mr.
have one slip from
Mr.
Mr. Fred Sweeney, and he brought a handout. I'll share.
All right, Mr. Sweeney.
Push, it's on. Thank you. So I'm here today because I get to work for free, so I don't have to feel bad about billing a client for all this stuff you have to do to get through the city process. I'm handing out, I made 10 copies, handing out a lengthy kind of a diary of the process to get the access for handicap ramp at the old Mission. It's taken 2.5 years, and we hit a milestone yesterday. The permit was actually issued. But I spent most of the day, I'm now part of an organization trying to educate the public about a project that's been given a notice to the community for a public comment by September 30th, and yet they can't see anything to make public comment on. So I spent a lot of that day doing that. So I'm not going to go through this document with you. You can read it at your leisure. You can throw it in the trash can, whatever. It covers a lot of things. I could sit down with you and make lots of suggestions about how to deal with Excella and some of the other things that are very frustrating for many people in the process, but that can't be done in 2 minutes. And I'm not pessimistic. I'm pretty pessimistic that anything will actually get changed for the better. I do appreciate Ms. Kokinda and where is he? Sitting right here, Tim. Their effort to streamline the single-family board review process. That was a huge improvement, but I haven't seen much from anybody else at this point. And you'll see as you read this document, there is a lot of inability for anybody to talk to each other, either between the silos or for the public to actually talk. And maybe that has to do with old guys like me that like to just pick up the phone and solve the problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the public in chambers? Not seeing any online wish to speak?
This is not an online meeting, so there are no.
Sorry, force to have it. All right, so I'll close public comment and now turn over to my colleagues for any thoughts, questions. Member Santamaria.
Thank you, Chair Friedman. I really just want to thank our staff. I'm really wanting to take this time to really learn and listen, this being my first time on this committee meeting, but it's very obvious that you are all so incredibly diligent in improving our processes, and truly thank you, because I hear it so much from the community, with our housing stock that is often on the older side, and we want to make sure that folks have a simple process to make the improvements they need, add to our existing housing stock, maintain it, and there's a lot of things in here to praise and really look forward to. So I just want to extend my thank yous. Also, thank you to everybody who did the presentations. These were very simple to follow, very informative. I was shocked I didn't have questions. Maybe they'll come up later and I'll email you. But this, I'm really hoping that also members of the public are tuning into these things, because there is a lot of valuable information for the folks wanting to maintain and add to our housing stock. And I would love to second what Chair Friedman mentioned earlier about collaborating with our local media and making sure that we get this information out, because you are all very clearly doing the work. Sometimes the public just isn't aware of these really great improvements. So, whatever we can do as committee members, as council members, to help you all get that word out and help our constituents make use of these new services, I'm here for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Jordan?
I'd echo most of that too. Most of my thoughts these days are just how short time is when you sit in one of these chairs. And, you know, they've come to realize that a 10-year housing element puts a burden on you for 10 years that you can't get out of, even though life changes 2, 3, 5 years into that housing element, and we're still doing things that, in my opinion, and I think shared by lots of people, the priorities have been, you know, the priorities of those things aren't as important as the priorities of other things that have popped up since that time, but we're chained to having to do that to 10 years at a time. And I just think if I was opining on housing elements, I'd say you need a lot less work to go into them, and they need to be a lot shorter, so you can just be a lot more proactive to what's going on out in the real world. Same with state legislation. You hear me say this all the time. We should be screaming at our state elected legislatures to stop dreaming of new ways to not really make real improvements, but put a whole lot of burden on us while we're trying to do our jobs. And all of that plays into how many people can answer the phone, how many people can stand at a counter, how responsive we are to voicemails. I'm as old as Fred, and I'd rather email than talk to somebody. I want to move on. But and I think those are all a struggle. I get pretty impatient about the whole thing, particularly with my baggage background. But I think staff does as well as they can, and I think we need to be able to tell that story better also. So ditto in the points of better publicity. Josh is sitting in the back row, and that's the first time I've seen those Creeks things in ever. And Josh remembers sitting in a car with me for 4 miserable hours coming back from Monterey after a sewage or treating water conference, and all I was out of the whole 2 days of things, all I could talk about was the 17 PIOs in the city of San Francisco Water Department, and how everything they put out had a picture, you know. And I was going, why our water inserts are all like 4 pages of single line, you know, narrative on how your water gets used. I'm going, oh my God, Josh, look, we need to do pictures. And so those little booklets like that are great, and they'd be a great resource to start to have those conversations when you get a complaint on, you know, why is the city doing this to me? So I've sent an email to Josh to get a copy of each of them. I'll do my part. But I think we could tell our story, a positive part of our story, a lot better. The boss hears this all the time on how to not have the silos all talking about themselves separately, and having the silos working sideways with each other too, to tell the story, so we're all telling the same kind of story and it's linking together. So that would pretty much just be my whole input in this. I'm annoyed with the state, think we need to do publicity better, but otherwise happy to see these items continue to get knocked down. But there's probably like another 20 new items that weren't on that list just as a result of time. So thanks for all the work you do.
All right, well, thank you to our staff for the presentations, and good to meet some of our new staff. You did a great job presenting in front of the committee. Also, this was important. One, it was Councilmember Santamaria's first meeting here, but also it'd been quite a while since we've had this too, so it was a great refresher for myself as well. A lot of nuance in here, and I would agree with what my colleagues have said. Just a couple additional add-ons is, when we're looking at the 31 recommendations, a lot of them do say complete, but some of them, by their very nature, are never going to be complete. They're constant improvements. I'll just pick like number 18. It says reduce regulations and eliminate process steps. So that is just something, when we have it complete, we move on to another one, to have a system in place so that we go back and reevaluate how can we continually improve where we are, because no system is ever going to be perfect for whatever endeavor a person or an organization is undertaking. And as part of that would be to get feedback from members who have gone through the process, whether it's on the housing side or whether it's on the business side of trying to get permits to open a business through the building process, to see what is the feedback, and if that feedback is aligning where we think we are, because we still do, as council members, get complaints about the process took too long. You know, it should have taken, in other areas, it would have taken 6 months or versus a year here, those types of things. So that we're constantly in that feedback loop where we've made a lot of progress, and I think we should be able to tell that story. We're far ahead of where we were just a few years ago, but also keeping in mind that the Novak report's already, what, five years old? So what has changed with state legislation that we need to update? So again, just constantly going back and reevaluating. And I know that's staff intensive, but there are points of maybe we do this, but when someone goes through the process, getting that immediate feedback from them through either surveys or just check out what went well for you, what didn't, and finding a way to log that so that you could come back and look at how is this in terms of these 1831 recommendations. And then the ADUs, I really am interested to see how we can get the word out on those pre-approved templates. And I do like the suggestion that perhaps the city find a way, maybe we can purchase and use those so we have those, and that takes some of the guesswork out. But there are costs with that too, and I am aware of our budget issues, but if that is a possibility of, say, having just 3 or so, something like that, that makes it simple, where they just come in with the city, that would be something I think the public might really like entertain that notion on that. And I think that is all I have on the feedback right now. So with that, we do need to go back, Member Jordan, to item, the minutes. Yeah, we tabled them till now, so we're gonna open that item back up. All right, is there a second? I'll second them. And all in favor? Aye. Any opposed, abstentions? Nope, passes unanimously, so we approve the minutes, and I think that is everything. So with that, we are adjourned till the next meeting. Thanks.